Okay, so if we don't have any other comments, so probably towards the end, I would ask Borja to tell us something about an IP as an asset and looking for some long-term or short-term financing return.
Thank you. If it sounds good, I will try to keep my voice with some up and downs to keep everybody awake. I think we have heard a really nice explanation from Vincent and from Audrey on actually two entities with a great focus on IP. From Vincent, also some elements in connection with spin-offs and venture capital, and from Audrey, a large company with great attention, great investment on R&D and also on IP management. So from my side, I would try to give a view from an operator, from a telecom operator. I think I also heard this morning some ideas about revenue generation, about how to monetize IP. In many events that I go about IP, that is a typical question. It looks like somebody's going to come with a secret formula about how to monetize IP. Let's say I'm more realistic or maybe a little bit more modest, trying to at least create awareness and interest from our CFO. That is already a great success. So in order to achieve that, what at least what we have been trying to do within Liberty Global, and I will give some context on the company, is try to, rather than be unrealistically ambitious or try to create a large portfolio or try to move from our area of legal IP support function into a closer area to the core business. And I say closer to the core business does not mean actually that it's replacing or being part of the core business, because we are realistic also, and our business is to provide services. So we're not going to replace that by becoming a patent holder to license out, at least in our case. And every company is different. So I think that the main message, and I will explain briefly, is basically that every company has to have their own customized strategy with respect to monetization of IP, and try to define the interests of executive management, of course, but also within the strategy of the company, try to adapt your structuring IP to that strategy of the company. So for those that I would just give a quick intro on Liberty Global. For those who are not familiar with the company, just 3 slides, so don't be afraid. And quickly, so it's a cable operator. Today is the largest cable operator worldwide. We have a sister company who is Liberty Media, behind Dan Warner Cable, Discovery, and also other investments like Formula One, etc. And Liberty Global is the non-US operations, and we are in 30 countries right now at this moment. As you can see, I mean, I don't have to explain anything on this, so cable operator, digital products, digital TV, etc. But just one detail that is relevant later is that we are quite, let's say, active on everything in connection with content, and also with a lot of services that they are complementary to what we think is just cable. So what I mean is that we are focused on investments on biometrics, or we're talking about e-health, so many elements that it could be brought to households, because at the end of the day, we have connectivity, we have hardware at our customers' houses, so we can also bring additional services. So this is just, let's say, the basics. So 30 countries, footprint, keep it short. So these are some numbers, so you have an idea of that we are a big company. And this is relevant in line with what Audrey mentioned a minute ago, is that how is it possible, because that was an idea that came to my mind on stage, how is it possible that a company of 45,000 people with significant revenues and also significant activities does not have an really aligned, strategic, harmonized IP strategy? We go on the flow, just we see, okay, we have problems, risk mitigation, like that was mentioned before, we do that. We have some issues with potential claims from our vendors, we deal with that. But there is no really a proactive, or there was not a really proactive approach on that. So we were trying to change that mentality. The last slide on the introduction of Liberty Global, relevant, I will link it later, is how active we are on M&A. So these are just some numbers, of course. The 82 billion is not coming from small startups. So obviously you have to add there the deal of Virgin Media, that only that one was around 24 billion. But basically we acquire M&A machine on a yearly basis. We have been acquiring some companies, and that is also part of the DNA of the company. So in my case, I should be aware of that, and I should address my strategy, our strategy towards that, in order to attract the attention of the CFO, the CEO, and in practice actually the entire team. I mean all the different departments, because they know what is important for the company. So just some elements, just to give you a quick explanation. So basically, these are just some references of large acquisitions, so cable operators, telecoms. So Base, of course, we are in Belgium, is known, and it's not here, but Telenet is one of our affiliates. And majority, the rest are 100% known, but Telenet is the exception. And the other deals are just basically minority stakes. We have done a lot of stakes, equity on software solutions, data centers, etc. So I leave it there just for you to have some context on the company. So when we present the company, we always say, and also Audrey mentioned, like it's a sort of a corporate presentation. We are innovative. What does it mean actually? Because when we discuss this internally, we say, well, actually we are not Qualcomm, or we are not Intel, meaning like they have heavy R&D. We are just a services provider. And I think it's neither of those situations. I mean, I think 45,000 people from whom, though, I know I say a number, 80% easily, if not 85, 90%, are basically engineers, people they are on the product side, etc. There must be some R&D. I do not care if there is no R&D department with that name. So there has been some innovation, of course, as a result of the evolution of the company. And going to the point of today, among other areas of focus, what we are trying to do is say, okay, how can we prove the value to, let's say, it's obviously not from him only, but let's say to our CFO in this case, of IP as an asset. And we focus, among other things, on short-term monetization. And I will skip today the whole thing of product cycles, but basically it's just about, we think that we have better knowledge of our technologies, we are able to interact better with our vendors, we will be able to also bring solutions closer and quicker to the market. So, going to the topic, examples. So I cannot give obviously details or amounts, so it's a lot of language, sorry for that. Because I cannot explain exactly what has been the return, but just to really high level situations. And we'll give some example in the next slide. So from procurement perspective, obviously we can, if we have a better understanding of the technology we have in-house and the technology that's offered to us, we will be able to leverage better with our vendors. Situation was, real case was with a vendor, a large player, came with a technology like 6 years ago. That technology in 5 years changed completely thanks to our effort together with them, but I would say from the feedback we got from the teams from both sides, it was 90% on our side. However, we're still paying fees for that technology, although it changed completely. That makes no sense. We should be leveraging that better. We should be more efficient. Corporate venturing. How many of you are directly or indirectly involved in corporate venture capital? Venture capital, corporate venture capital, private equity. Okay, I see a few, 2, 3, more or less. The rest, either they are not or they are sleeping. So I will take it as they are not. So corporate venture capital, as you probably, I mean, even if you're not involved, you know, is just strategic investment. So it's basically you invest in something that's going to bring strategic value to your company in comparison with what would be venture capital or private equity that is basically focused on financial return. So now the point is, in this case, we have tried to see how actually IP, for instance, copyright, software, etc., we can leverage that as part of an corporate venture capital investment. In the next slide, I will go to the example, and this is just to fluffy, let's say, graph to show where we get all the knowledge, where we get all the IP, all the innovation, etc. I think on the left side, there's nothing new for all of you. most of your companies, they will have something like that, either incubation or coming from other companies. In our case, the special situation is, of course, that we are outsourcing a lot. Because we are a telecom operator, a large company, we deal with Qualcomm a little bit, but we do a lot of things with Nokia, with Ericsson, with Amdocs on the network side, with many different vendors, hardware, Samsung, etc., Huawei. So it is quite broad, the spectrum of technologies that we are developing with them. A quick question: if I talk about technologies of cable operators, what do you think? Somebody could give me just a quick answer. What kind of technology do you think I'm talking about? Because I mean, there are some people from the telecom space here, but for other people might not be so known. What do you think? I mean, I work in a cable operator. I mentioned digital content, etc. Anybody a wild guess who is not in the space of what kind of technologies we are talking about? No? No? Yeah, that would be the painful technology, let's say. I mean, like the awful one, the DOCSIS, the standards, is changing slowly. The nicer one, the cooler one is, I mentioned before, biometrics, solutions that we're into the users. We have invested recently in a company called Venium in Palo Alto that they do Wi-Fi enhancement. So connecting black boxes of public transport to Wi-Fi hotspots in order to have a large Wi-Fi network, mobile network from those black boxes with fixed hotspots for the future IoT environment. So we are basically creating, let's say, the network of the future, so everybody is able to order coffee when they're in the bus going home, and then they arrive home and they have the coffee. So apparently, it's what we want to have. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so that is a little bit the link what we are doing with IP and corporate venture. I will give detail on that. Maybe that should be the order. Let's say. So this was a real case in which basically we just assigned certain software to a newco, company A. Company X was the company who developed that initially that for us. And basically we said, okay, look, we have using that internally. What do we do now with that? It's not generating anything. We have a nice software. Company X said, okay, actually I think I can monetize on that. So basically we just signed the IP to that new entity. We, in exchange, of course, obtain certain equity in that new entity. And then directly, we save a lot on maintenance costs, upgrades, and we are facilitating the creation of an ecosystem without, to be clear, doing much. So by just giving something to a new entity that we were not using anything else other than for internal purpose. Is it clear, the example? Yeah? It's quite simple. I mean, it's nothing sophisticated. But in practice, I don't know why. I don't see so many of those. I see a lot of spin-offs. I see a lot of spin-outs. Indeed, as Vincent said, he said there are some concerns about what will happen. But this is simple. It's just like, for us, from a corporate venture capital perspective, it makes no sense to control too much these entities. And that is where the point I want to make here in this slide. So we are investing IP in exchange of equity, or instead of capital, sorry. In this case, we were dealing with unregistered rights, so it's not only about patents. Just to give a little bit more a different example, we assign it on an exclusive basis because we want to give freedom to that entity to grow, to create muscle, to create an ecosystem that we can benefit later. Because that technology develops, we will also be able to, in 2 years, 3 years, to benefit from that grades of the technology. I personally think co-ownership is impractical and for many different things besides the legal aspects. And we are not applying, let's say, certain non-compete provisions. Just to give a quick note, my background is legal and business. Of course, I will do it from a legal perspective. But in a practical case, it's unrealistic because basically we will be telling this company that they cannot go to any telecom. And that is what they do. So it is, we will be killing the company. So it would not make sense to create a new code for that purpose. So basically, rather we have technology in-house and we keep it for ourselves than just waste our time. We, of course, look into cost savings. I mentioned maintenance, upgrades, we can get those for free or license back, favorable conditions, etc. But the most important thing is the ecosystem creation. Basically, we are just putting a little seed there and allowing that company doing for us and helping them, of course, with some capital, etc., what we cannot do. Because we are a proprietary environment, we cannot just go to Vodafone, etc., to say, maybe you want to use this technology, but they can do that. So quickly, obviously, and so you remember the first topic of the title of the presentation was about financial impact short term. In one of the titles of the slides was low-hanging fruit, quick returns. I wanted to stop here. Obviously, we can do things on tax centralization, revenue recognition, many things are possible. In this case, the only thing I will mention in this case is that because we are the company that we are, a little bit a complex company, we have been acquiring continuously, and we are every year going through synergies, and every year through reorgs, and every year through consolidations. It's a huge challenge, at the same time, a great opportunity for tax efficiencies. So, now, obviously all this story from my side makes no sense if it's not in line with the strategy of the company. Obviously, sorry, I'm putting a really basic and naive slide because I'm not allowed to present the flashy ones. But you can get obviously what is the focus of our company, what are the different elements. But this is not so much important. The important piece perhaps is this. So how we translate that element on the IP strategy into our area, that element of the business strategy into our IP strategy. So we see just to point out a few elements. So we know that the market is changing, that the consumers are having more and more demands. Companies are convergent. Qualcomm, you mentioned it there in the slide, this one with the 4G, richer content, that's what we do. So we try to also bring service to our customers, any place, with connected vehicles, with anything. Everybody's trying to do the same, to be clear. And we see Qualcomm, we see Google, we see us, we see Vodafone, many different markets, many different areas. They're trying to find their space. So in order to not just become a dumb pipe, basically, as companies like Netflix are trying to push us, you try to leverage what you have. So you leverage on technology development, you try to create a scale, play with the bundling of services. And these are elements specific to what is typical in a strategy of a company or a telecom. Now, in line with all that, what we have tried to do is put, for instance, mechanisms to trigger some return on our side from IP perspective, like in this case, technology fee. You will see a few slides. So obviously, this is not a mistake. It's just things that I blocked, but at least that you know there is something else. But basically, just to give you an idea, so this is just, so introduce technology fee, which basically, there are two elements, two parameters that is with respect to how we are, what is our criteria for M&A acquisitions. So that is why what is under let's say, these nice blocks. And that is the whole principle, try to align those two things. This is nothing else than just to show you how obviously anybody will be calculating that transfer pricing. So we try to play with our colleagues from the tax team. And why I show this is just basically and I'm not crazy by just putting slides with these big green blocks, but it's basically, so you see how we structure different elements. So you define the strategy of the company. We align that on IP level. We try to put figures on that because we cannot just go with philosophy and mottos and slogans to our CFO. We put numbers. And then we structure that within the complexity of our company. So what is here is just simply numbers of what is the IP ownership of Liberty Global Corporate versus the countries. Simple as that. So I can explain it better if I can show this. And this is basically in a company with the complexities that we have, how a company is interacting with the opcos, and how that relevant is within an environment in which is so challenging. Just a quick note, my feeling is that If we are able to do what we're trying to do in Liberty Global, I think we can do it in any company. And I don't try to be arrogant in that case. What I mean is that a company that does not have historical tradition IP, which is focused clearly on other things like M&A transactions, and which is continuously on a yearly basis acquiring above 10 billion companies every year, and which tries to combine and consolidate those. And then to go to the executive management and tell them, by the way, and at the same time that you are doing this reorg in the UK, that you have to lay off X number of people to reduce cost and see redundancies, let's see if we can do something on IP synergies. As you can imagine, it's quite a challenge, and the first reaction at the beginning was quite like, you're crazy, or don't disturb me, or something worse. So we are trying to see what is the, let's say, the interesting elements there. We are finishing, by the way, so stay with me just a sec. Is there any question so far? We are like 2 slides to go. No? Okay. You keep it for the last? Perfect. We'll skip this one, because basically this is just, as you can see, in many different financial departments, corporate finance, how they structure, and basically what we're trying to do is align all that with CapEx allocation, etc. So it's just LRP is the long-range planning, and basically it's about CapEx. I will skip this one. This is about defense. I will go to this. That is the almost last one. On the defense side, I skipped this one intentionally because we talk about monetizing IP. A lot of times, or unconsciously, I think we mention examples like defense or risk mitigation. And for me, that is not monetization. And because basically we are still a call center. So just when we talk about monetizing, it's basically using something that is there as an untapped resource, try to see how we can make money out of it. This is just about, as I mentioned before, it's defensive, so I just mentioned it to illustrate what I was describing. And the last thing is, this is an example of one of the initiatives within the company. You will remember, some of you, at the beginning I mentioned about shortening product cycles, and we're trying to do that. There is a gating process through the company. So basically we combine that with what is also called some open innovation platform, and we combine that with some kind of IP management tool. I think we are quite pragmatic, because basically we are not experimenting with many things unless that they are clearly addressed or addressable to the business, and that they are having a clear return in the short, medium term. And this is the last one. I just summarizing a little bit. So I think a lot of times we talk about valuation, and that is nice, that is interesting to define the value of intangibles, obviously. But I think a lot of times we lack of the capacity to prove the value of something to the management team. So basically we can put a price tag, we can define a fee for licensing out technologies, but it's not always the case that we prove the value to the executive team. I will give, if you have the time yet, I will give a quick example. A couple of weeks ago, a month ago, I was talking to somebody from a known company in the US, well known, and that person was working on the licensing out department. So as you can imagine, it's a large corporation. It's not here, by the way, so nobody could be offended. And basically it was explaining me that they say, no, we are actually related quite some revenues because we are licensing out our portfolio to third parties. And I say, okay, that's great. I mean, and what happened with, because I knew that certain patents, they were ending with patent trolls. And they say, oh yeah, with those patent trolls we have litigation, but this is the problem of the legal department. So basically, they was telling me that as long as they have the positive numbers in their department, they were happy. And I just want to make a number, by the way. It's not the number. But let's say if they were making 900 million, they were fine. But perhaps they have litigation for 1.2 billion. And it was not their problem because the licensing out justified the job and the work and the resources of that specific department. I cannot justify that to my team or to my executive team. And if they find out that we were trying to do something like that, it would be crazy. And this was a well-known company with a well-established IP team. So I think, unfortunately, those things happened. We're not really looking into the group element.
I do have a question.
Please.
Does it mean that you are fully integrated, so you know exactly from the global perspective where are the litigation, where are the pitfalls, in terms of the licensing deals, you have an idea, so you have the full picture?
On litigation, yes, because it's relatively simple. Luckily, we don't have so much. Well, we have quite some in the UK. We have 11 cases in the past. Now, not anymore. But on the other elements, it's a challenge. To be cancer is a challenge because when we acquire a company, it's not the priority to see what we are licensed. So we go through a whole process, etc. So we have a relatively good picture for running that.
Congratulations.
But it could be better. Let's say that. Could be better. So just this is the last slide, so nobody be afraid. It's just to point out a few things and give you some examples. So on the customization API strategies, what I mentioned before, in our case, we are not in the business of creating large IP portfolios or patent portfolios. However, we think we can have leverage with our vendors. Cost reduction is there, but rather more important is the financial impact from tax, accounting, financial leverage. By the way, we can do a lot of things in our M&A activities with Citibank, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, in the same way that we leverage, let's say, for instance, real estate to continue our M&A investments. We can also leverage intangibles, so we're trying to do that. The investment mechanism that I before mentioned about an example of corporate venture capital, etc. The challenge of local implementations, quite important in our case. And just as a last message for us, the huge, let's say everything is easier if we follow a little bit the guidelines of what is already established. So we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are trying just to see, okay, what is there on accounting perspective? What we're doing M&A, what we are doing on financial. Every company is different. So we say, okay, look, let's try to customize our strategy to those things that already exist. And in that way, I think we have been a little bit more successful, modestly successful, let's say. Thank you. I don't know if...
So thank you for all three presentations, and now I'm opening the floor for general questions to Borja's presentation or to general, any of the presentations.
Thank you. I have a question for Borja. So in which department have you put your IP strategy? And which other departments within the company are your best allies or your best foes?
In our case, it's a really good question because in our case, actually, it's a little bit special. So just to give some quick background, I was hired for M&A activities legal. As I said, my background is also, my training is also business. Initially, there was the priority, let's say. I saw the urgent need for this. So I tried to push it a little bit. Later, due to different strategy things, I changed to corporate venture capital. So I saw the fitting nicer there. And now, the IP strategy formally is under the legal team. In practice, our main sponsor is definitely not the general counsel. And by the way, I have to say, luckily, because of otherwise it would be, I think, the whole project is stigmatized a little bit in that area. Is the CTO. So the chief technology officer is, in our case, because now they changed his title, also is chief technology and innovation officer. But basically, under his umbrella, there are, I think, quite some budget of the company, obviously. And he's quite a smart guy and really interesting all new things. And yeah, thanks to that, we have been successful on pushing slowly that. But I can also tell you that within legal has not been easy, because basically there is just a feeling of risk mitigation. So you basically place yourself there. So it's impossible to go from cost reduction, risk mitigation, defensive strategies to talk about revenue generation, etc. Because, by the way, the other way is also wrong, because people, they say, oh, you want to do something on IP monetization. They immediately think, okay, you want to have a huge patent portfolio. It's not the case. Because of course, if they think that, they will think that we will invest crazy on patent filing. I don't think we are at the stage, and we can do much better in different way, in our case. And or they will think that we are going to try to challenge our vendors on push them on licensing out our technologies, and it's also not the case. The low-hanging fruit is much easier. So answering your question, so CTO, technology teams, we are getting a lot of knowledge from them. Procurement has been a little bit more supportive now because it changed. Also, the organization is now under the umbrella of the CFO. So you have to adapt a little bit to the structure. The organizational culture is huge thing. And what is this book from Porter on the urgency, the 5 phases for change? I think it's a good principle. We have tried to create a lot of urgency in the organization, scaring out of people. But if you scare them, they say, "Oh, you're talking about litigation again," and then we go wrong. So we try other things, not just scaring them, and just presenting what we think we could do realistically.
Are there some other questions in the audience? Well, probably I would have.
Borja, do you have your own profit and loss responsibility, or is it more a cost center still?
Yeah, because of the complexity of the company, also we have been obviously we have our own budgets, but on target, etc. Luckily, by the way, we are not having really strict targets. So we go on a per department basis. So we have certain departments that are more active on innovation. They do investment R&D. We try to leverage on that, etc. So we are, let's say, that's why I use the term low-hanging fruit. We're using the existing resources. So the P&L in that way is not so impacted. It's a way of not killing ourselves in success, because you never know if you can. I mean, you also have to be realistic. When you are trying to implement something for the first time in a company of this size, you can kill the project in 1 month if all of a sudden you are not reaching certain targets. So the P&L in this case, we are, let's call it, externalizing that. So we have our own budget for activities, but we are trying to leverage on existing resources from other departments to take costs, to monetize. We bring the benefit to the company, I'm very happy, etc.
Well, then I would probably have a question. We discussed a week ago shortly an introduction on the phone. All 4 of us, unfortunately, Borja could not attend. And there was a question or kind of a discussion going on if cross-functional teams are necessary in the IP world. And I was very amazed about the answer yes, and I would also like to hear why you think so, why the cross-functional teams are so important nowadays when we are handling IP issues.
It's a question to me?
Yeah, to all 3 of you.
Well, for sure, what we have learned over the years. So, of course, like I said, I started as an engineer, and I was by accident actually engaged in IP, really. And we learned over the years that we needed to be able to talk to legal, to understand what they were saying, but also to business, because when you get your patent attorney training, you're focusing on the patent prosecution and all the deadlines and this type of stuff. But the business aspect then had to came in. So for sure you need to develop your skills, but at least the ability to talk to others. Yeah? And that takes a while before you try to focus on your own skills. Yeah? And you might end up with a sort of tunnel vision, so to speak. So over the years, we had to develop the possibility to work with others. Although organized in different groups and different departments, you sort of splitting the competences, but you need to align a lot. Yeah? And it takes an effort to do that, for sure.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm going to try that. Yeah, so I fully agree with that. I think that IP is not limited to, I would say, lawyers. And it's getting more and more traction with, I would say, many players as well. And just to give you an anecdote, so last week when we had the call, I was stuck in Venice, but really stuck in Venice, to attend the EPO Awards. And to me, so it's the award organized by the European Patent Office. And I was discussing with many inventors and as well officials from the European Patent Office. And basically what they asked me as an industry player, that you need to make this award more visible. And so it has absolutely, I would say, nothing to do with patent application, or litigation. It's what kind of value you want to bring to society. And when you have an agency like the EPO, trying in a way doing a bit of marketing for our industry, I think it showed that everybody has to be engaged now, and the more we can do to talk about the value added of the IP industry as a whole, the better it is. So to me, it's not just like some silos in one companies or administration. This is really, and I think maybe this is where we need to raise more awareness as well, and work as defending much more than just the IP system, but what it brings to everybody.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I think today it's impossible to say to know everything. That everybody is training in all different areas, but if you want to be able to present to the business what is the potential financial return, ideally you have some financial knowledge, so you will be able to explain in their own language what is the impact. I think from the legal departments, legal team, etc. Also, I think it's a great critical knowledge, critical perspective into the detail, analytic, etc. Although we have been also stigmatized sometimes for being too picky, but I think in practice I would call it analytical. And then obviously the engineers, and not only the engineers that are involved in the development itself, the creations, invention, etc., but also those that are in the IP departments, that they are able to translate a little bit more efficient way, and especially those engineers that they have been also for a while in this specific industry. I mean, and the challenge, and just to end, the challenge that nowadays, of course, that the specific industry is broader and broader. So what we see is that colleagues in my team, for instance, that they are having an amazing experience for 30 years or more on the digital TV space, and they have been working in companies from Ardeto or Nagravision to other to operators, to conditional access providers, to whatever, and many different technologies. For those that are familiar in that space, it's quite a complex environment. So it's not only TV and that's it. But today they are confronted with other environments. Before, during lunch, we were talking about technology for people with hearing disabilities and for deaf people, etc. Those technologies have been, I say not specifically those technologies, but technologies applied to the e-health environment, that they apply to, for instance, for the elderly people to support, and how those specific devices they are connected, and maybe the data is managed in order to bring that data to hospitals. So there are so many technologies that are converging today that is becoming more and more complex for our colleagues from the engineers to obviously know about everything. So I think it's challenging, but it's quite interesting, and indeed it's good that we have these multifunctional departments.
So thank you so much. So I think, like as a closing word, we are hoping for more diversity groups and teams collaboration and happy marriages, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.